Welcome, friends of the show. We are back with another episode of the Ferris Wheel Serious Rock Talk podcast.
Ooh, all right.
A big thanks for your emails, suggestions, and your support on our social media platforms. Continue to email us at seriousrocktalk@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Listen to a new show every week. Just tune in each Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. New York City time on Cap City Beats, located at www.capcitybeats.ca. Okay, buckle up for some serious rock talk. Anyways, today's a good day. It's beautiful outside. Ian, today we have a special topic, I believe, that is true and dear to your heart.
Well,
Kennedy just went NPR on us.
I know. It's a little rainy out there. Watch yourself. This coffee's effing good.
Do you want some sweaty balls?
Yeah. This is a mocha Java blend I can appreciate.
Oh, you don't like my NPR?
No, I love it, actually.
There's absolutely
It's right on the money,
no
actually.
intro anywhere. Peach sweaty. Well, I guess in a way it is. Folks, you've heard of the British invasion, in terms of classic rock. I've titled this little talk, The Perfect Storm or What? Because a lot of this happened, just no one was in control. It's totally organic. The British invasion, what does it mean? Was it just a PR term to encapsulate classic rock from about 64 to 67? And what bands does it, first of all, include? Well, I'll give you the list just to kind of lay the cement of the foundation here for this little chat. Bands that are considered British invasion bands. Okay, the Animals, the Zombies, the Beatles, or the Yardbirds, Cream, The Who, Dave Clarke 5, the Trogs, Petulia Clark, Traffic, Spencer Davis, Dusty Springfield, Donovan, Small Faces, Marianne Faithfull. I don't know about that. The Searchers, Herman's Hermits, Rolling Bones. Who else we got? Holly, Sure, Procol Harum, Tom Jones, The Kinks, Manfred Mann, Moody Blues, and duos like Peter and Gordon. By the way, the big question here, as I was putting this together, without the Beatles, does the term British invasion make any sense? Just keep that in mind. I think I'll try to answer that later on, or maybe we will in the discussion. There are a lot of shifts in music that, no matter how revolutionary, are what I would say inevitable. And the big one that people always bring up is Elvis Presley. Yes, he's iconic, but if he hadn't have been there, would somebody else have filled that role?
Well, Buddy Holly kind of started.
But Buddy Holly had no sex appeal, right?
The big bopper.
Hello there, baby. I think that he probably peaked at that song.
You think?
Please. This is the Big Bopper speak. But yeah, so I don't know. My cat, maybe 50-50. I don't know, I think.
Well, hold on. If you're talking about appeal.
I'm talking about if Elvis Presley hadn't have been there, would there be some other white guy in 1955, 54, whatever, that would have come along and taken up that mantle?
But you said Buddy Holly wasn't as good looking as Elvis
well,
Presley.
yeah,
Okay.
plus he's a bit later, Buddy Holly.
What about Dion and the Belmonts? Like, he was a good-looking guy. What about
guess.
Frankie Valli and Annette Funicello? Right? I know it's Funicello, but they was called her Funicello. You know what I mean? Like, they were what, in the 50s?
No, they're later.
Oh, they're later. Okay.
Elvis Presley was first.
50-something.
55.
I mean, if you go in that
56.
that era, you got Jerry Lee Lewis, who's still touring, to my amazing
that's-
surprise. But the thing is, the guy was so controversial that he became toxic.
No one knows, the young people, especially today, don't know Jerry Lee Lewis or Carl Perkins or Eddie Cochran. Everybody knows Elvis Presley.
Okay, you know what? Chuck Berry. He could have done it.
Well, he was
Actually,
there.
Ian said the thing.
No.
It has to be a white guy.
He's got
Why?
Because it's the
well,
South.
but it's 1955.
Yeah.
It's
So?
not me.
It's in the South.
But
They're not going to play. Wait a second. Not going to play black artists on white stations in the South.
really?
No.
Ray Charles didn't get any airtime.
No,
I think
not in the South. But, and when they first had heard Presley, they wouldn't play him because they thought he was black.
That is so sad that that era happened because
Yeah.
Chuck Berry was awesome. And this explains why the Isley Brothers didn't get enough credit for Twist and Shout.
Yep. There's a whole bunch of stuff. They were on gospel stations, the Isleys. They were thought of for a while as a gospel group.
Because they did a good, that version, even though it was done by somebody else,
Yeah.
that was really well done.
That was I preferred over the Beatles, actually. But yeah. So
do I.
And they also the version of was just called Shout, which is a pure gospel. It was the
Oh,
frame,
yeah.
you make me want to shout. Yeah, shout. Yeah.
Okay, when did Chubby Checker come around?
The Twist
Yeah.
was around 60s, early 60s.
So he's after Elvis.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This, folks, this is the thing. We did a show. Look it up on our website on Elvis. Elvis, whatever you think of him, was the king because he was really the first. The only guy doing the same thing was really Bill Haley and the Comets a year
forgot about
before.
him. Yeah.
And he had one or two hits, but he looked like someone's accountant. Bill, he had zero. In fact, he had so little sex appeal, it was in the negatives, Bill Haley. But he, essentially, what they used to call hillbilly music. Like, it's not... Elvis was really the first with the sax and the look and the blue suede shoes. He put it all together. So anyway... There are a lot of shifts in music. Maybe somebody else could have filled in for Elvis. But Elvis went into the Army, I think, about 1960. And in a way, I'm sorry, he never really left the building after that. He made terrible movies, bad albums. Now and then a song popped up, but generally it was over. Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, these guys are dead in, 59? And as Jerry Lee Lewis said, after that, everybody was named Bobby for a while. And Don McLean was right. It's probably the day that the music died, but only for a while, Don. Just a few years to lighten the hell up. Don McLean is just so heavy in that. Because in England, this is the thing, rock and roll was alive, and it was inspired by America. And it's a wonderful irony. This rebellious tone and image of U.S. rock and roll and blues musicians became popular with British youth in the late 50s. It's such a weird thing, eh? As it was dying in America, it was influencing the skiffle craze and Lonnie Donegan and all these guys over in England. And a lot of bands, especially in Liverpool, the Mersey beat, started to get influenced by it.
You might want to explain, like, to people that are a little younger, why Liverpool? Because it might not make sense to them why specifically that.
Well, you should get a geography book and open it up.
No. But there's an economic reason actually why Liverpool.
There's a few reasons. One, Liverpool is a port city. I've been there a few times, and a lot of ships would come in from America, and these guys would have albums. That's where the Beatles first heard stuff like Gene Vincent and all this stuff. They would have albums from the States, and so they got exposed in Liverpool. Some observers have noted that U.S. teenagers were growing tired of the singles-oriented pop acts like Fabian. They didn't even have a song called Tiger Beat or something. Anyway, they're getting tired of it. So the takeaway here, my takeaway, is that maybe the money, greed, commercialization, whatever, snuffed out rock after Elvis left for the Army. And as I said, I don't think he really ever came back. Maybe with the 68 comeback special, maybe left for an hour and a half, you know what I mean? And then he was swallowed up by Vegas again. So there was, I use this term frequently, there was a perfect storm. In October 63, the first newspaper articles about this frenzy in England were noted in the U.S., and that frenzy was called Beatlemania. There's a famous clip on YouTube with John Lennon at the Royal Performance. I guess the Queen Mother was there, and he said in the expensive seats you can rattle your jewelry. You know, he's just being very Lennon even at that stage. Now, CBS anchor Walter Cronkite was looking for something positive to report on at this time. They were originally going to air something on Beatlemania on, get this, November the 22nd, 1963.
Oh, crap.
I know. Something rather significant happened on that date. So, of course, they pulled it. But a little while later, he said, we got to do something positive. And so they ran a Beatles special, segment, they were going to put on the day that President Kennedy was shot. Again, it's a perfect storm. People were searching, it's like after 9/11, people were searching for something light and happy. And the Beatles came along with their mop tops and I Want to Hold Your Hand. And that also added to this perfect storm, which is why McCartney accurately says, I think, Beatlemania can never be reproduced. How? There's so many vectors crossing. After seeing the Concrete report, a 15-year-old girl named Marcia Albert wrote a letter to a disc jockey at WWDC and said, why can't we have music like that here in America? Well, that disc jockey had her introduce "I Want to Hold Your Hand." The phones lit up, and across the nation, "I Want to Hold Your Hand" became a huge hit. In fact, Capitol Records was forced to release it 3 weeks ahead of the date. Capitol had no idea what they had on their hands. That's the irony of this whole thing. Only in retrospect would they claim that they did, right? Again, perfect storm. Baltimore Sun, although, said America better prepare for what's coming with the invasion. In fact, maybe a restrained Beatles go home might be the thing. See, people were also intimidated, especially DJs, because the Beatles at this time were so strong. In January '64, Jack Parr ran concert footage of the Beatles from the BBC as a joke. Jack Parr was Johnny Carson's predecessor. He's a very conservative guy. Problem with it is 30 million people watched it, and they loved it. It totally backfired. And George Martin, the Beatles producer, later said it was really the spark that lit it. So, "I Want to Hold Your Hand" made number one in January of 1964, right? The Beatles, Concrete, said, quote, "The British invasion this time goes by the code name Beatlemania." And then 2 days later, they were on Ed Sullivan. If you're interested in classic rock, this is one of the seminal moments in all of classic rock. Beatles and Ed Sullivan. It changed lives. I'm not being flippant. It changed lives. Again, perfect storm. Ed Sullivan was kind of known as a cookie and slippers guy. They couldn't, they'd have on a bunch of kind of twirling plate acts and old crooner acts. And suddenly the Beatles came in, and the studio, which became David Letterman's studio, exploded with interest. 1 week after they appeared, Dusty Springfield, the late great Dusty Springfield, came over and had a number 12 hit with Only Want to Be With You. During the next 3 years, more British acts started topping the charts in the U.S. You had guys like the Zombies, the Hollies, Graham Nash, Dave Clarke 5, really good drumming in that band, the Kinks, and the Rolling Bones.
You always like
I have to, because every time I see Jag, I go, "Yay!"
He's still going.
My God, he's a vampire. In '65, they had almost a sweep of the top 10 hits. So in other words, I'm saying the British invasion peaked rather with '65 in May. The musical style was interesting of these bands. You look at the Rolling Stones, very bluesy. The Animals, very bluesy. And the Beatles, very poppy. One of our earlier episodes, you have to go back a few years, folks. You can find these on our website, by the way. I referred to the Beatles more as a pop band than a rock band. What I was saying is real rock was something like the Rolling Stones. The Beatles were so poppy. They got rocky now and then, like with Revolution or whatever, but they were such a pop act. But they were influenced by the American bands, and they just gave it back to them with a few years lag in between. Eric Burden of the Animals said, quote, "They dressed us up in strange costumes. They were going to bring in a choreographer to show us how to move on stage. It was ridiculous. It was so far from our nature." And then he says, importantly, but when we arrived in America, they said, "Don't mention the Vietnam War." So I'll come back to this. It's the Vietnam War that really, I think, killed the British invasion. Suddenly, bands like the Herman's Hermits or the Dave Clarke 5 were not relevant anymore. In February 2021, a USA Today writer named Ken Barnes analyzed U.S. music acts that he thought might have been killed off by the British invasion by people like Bobby V, right? Neil Sedaka, Dion, and yes, Elvis Presley. Anyway, they eventually came back, I guess, Neil Sedaka, but they never got their luster back. At this time, too, the British invasion, I want you to keep in mind that we had something called the Motown sound, which was impervious to everything. People like the Four Tops, Stevie Wonder, the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, Martha Reeves, and the Vandellas. They were protected. It was almost like a separate show, but they got influenced by the Beatles, etc. In fact, Stevie Wonder had a big hit with the Beatles song, but they weren't influenced by them the way bands outside of Motown. They had a sound, the British invasion, and if you listen to the Byrds, Roger McGuinn and the Byrds, it's as if they took the British invasion sound and warped it through kind of folky stuff and made it their own sound. The British invasion also drew backlash from U.S. bands. They were intimidated by them. Paul Revere and the Raiders dressed up in Revolutionary War. It looks so absurd. Gary Puckett and the Union Gap donned Civil War uniforms. Probably a bad decision. A garage rock band called the Barbarians wrote a song called "Are You a Boy or Are You a Girl?" And it contained the lyrics, "Either you're a girl or you come from Liverpool, and you can dance like a female monkey, but you swim like a stone. Yeah, a rolling stone." Like, so they're extremely intimidated by them because they were so popular at that period. Some guys from like California would put on British accents, and a group like the Buckinghams, who you thought were from England, were actually from the States. So the historical conclusion of the British invasion is ambiguous. The wave of the interest faded, as I said before, as the Vietnam War really ramped up in the late 60s. Some of those acts just broke up. It was over. And so there you have it, folks, in a nutshell, what this British invasion was all about. Answer, I think, my earlier question, when I led off with, is that the Beatles were the hurricane in this perfect storm. They influenced so many people. You don't have to like them, but the styles, the haircuts, everything else, the orchestration with, 3 guitars and drums, they influenced so much, and they helped to curate, they lit the fire under the British invasion. This has been Dr. Clarke, and you've been listening attentively.
Well, it's funny because Paul McCartney quoted, "We were just the spokesman for a generation." That's his quote out of a book actually called Rock in Time by David P. Satsbury. And this is where McCartney, pretty well, they are the reason why the British invasion.
Yeah, he has to say that, though. I mean, he can't say, yeah, we were, he can't. You're Paul McCartney.
But I'm happy this happened because if you look, here's a
great songs.
Great songs. Here's something. I'll ask you, Wheels, and I'll ask you, Ian.
Yep.
Of all the bands you like, realistically, how many of them are British?
I know we had this discussion before.
Think about
at least 25%. I'd say.
I'd say 50%. I know it's scary. This strange little island across the ocean.
But I have a theory about why Motown was impervious. Well, not completely, but it's because the British invasion was a result of a lot of black music getting to England.
I know, it's weird.
And I think in their case, it's we've heard this stuff before. Like we've been listening to gospel blues.
Yeah, I have the original of Money. Why would I want to hear the Beatles do it?
Exactly. I like that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Think about it. You said 50%.
I'd say, yeah.
Because I know your top 4 are the Stones, the Beatles, Zeppelin, and the Doors. Wow, that's 75% out of those 4.
I know. And then plus I bought, by the way, a greatest hits of the Zombies on vinyl recently. It's fantastic. So it's talk about that Uber group. I love the Kinks. They're so British, right? I don't know how that happened, but it happened. And I don't know why. I mean, sometimes it's the second generation, if anything. The first generation makes the money. Second generation
manages the money,
and the third loses it.
It spends it.
Like your favorite band is Pink Floyd, and you also like King Crimson. Last time I checked, they're both British.
Yeah,
super British.
Super British.
I'm a huge Zeppelin guy. They're British. Yeah, okay. I like Van Halen. That's American, but I also love the Stones. Well, here we go. We're going back to British.
I know. It's like there wasn't enough in doing this, putting together this podcast, folks. I was saying, what was going on in the States in 1965? Well, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's not rock. He's not pop for sure.
He's folk.
He won't say that, but he is a folk artist. Let's face it.
Although 65, isn't he going electric?
Yeah, he's going electric.
Well, because of the Paul Butterfield band.
All that stuff. Yeah, he's going. In the band helped him, but yeah. So in the
Actually, I just had a thought. I like rock and roll music. The Peter Paul and Mary? Yeah, the Peter Paul and Mary song where people said they are making fun of rock and roll.
Yeah.
If you listen to the lyrics, I think it's more or less a comment on the British invasion when you think about it.
I don't know the song. I'll have to look it up.
They talk about the mamas and the papas, but I think they mention the Beatles and they like.
Oh, good.
So it's basically the folkies saying, "Well, rock and roll music killed our particular."
Well, they really did. I mean, because the Beatles, like I've just seen a face or something. They wrote some kind of folky songs. They were really good songwriters. But that's when there's a lack, when there's a vacuum, something comes in to fill it, and that's life. And I thought, because this guy's right, where I got to some of these notes is that if you look at the early '60s, there were a lot of guys named Bobby. Bobby Vinton, Bobby B, whoever, Bobby Rodell. And I think people just got bloody tired of it. And they say, you know what? The hell with this. We've peaked. And don't give us another damn Elvis movie when he's dancing around on an island somewhere. And they had enough of it.
Was Payola in the 50s or the 60s?
50s.
The 50s.
Alan Freed, yeah.
See, it's funny because we're talking about bands and stuff that we've talked about and the bands that are actually kick ass, okay? I'll run it down for you real straightforward. You got the Beatles, Stones, Zeppelin, British. You want to go solo artists, you got David Bowie, British. Elton John, British. AC/DC's Australian, but for some odd reason, their lead singers all came from Scotland.
I know, it's weird.
You know, it's like
Although never to say to a Scot that he's Brit.
like, so it's like the British Isles, okay?
Yeah.
What else you want to go? You want to go Motorhead, British. Ozzy Osbourne, he's British. So is Black Sabbath. You know, Genesis, British. Pink Floyd, British. King Crimson, British. Eric Clapton, British. The Animals,
I know.
British.
It is disturbing, isn't it?
Is the Clash British? I think they are.
Oh, yeah.
Super British.
You know,
Well, in the 60s, you kind of explain it in the sense that Britain had a really incredible Hearts program. You could be as poor as dirt, and
Yeah,
you still
I like
learn to
that. I
play
know.
great music in school.
the
I know.
Animals, British, and the other one that you like, Ian, the Zombies,
British.
Super British. I know. You're right. There was a lack.
Hollies,
But also the
British.
training. I know. The Hollies, great band.
Like you could, the list just goes on. Now you
I
don't have
know.
to like them.
No.
You can say no. I still prefer the Eagles. Yeah, that's cool.
But the Eagles weren't around in '65.
Exactly.
There was nothing of that West Coast kind of laid back. There were the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys were a rarefied taste. Everyone goes on and listen. I love Pet Sounds, but it was a rarefied taste when it came out. It was so sophisticated and different. There were all these bobbies, as Jerry Lee Lewis said, and I think people peaked. And Elvis was never the same. And so what was there in 1964? The Beatles.
Yeah, I think also isn't like the early 60s, like 60 to 64, isn't that where jazz peaked as a popular...
That's really good. Yeah, it really was. You got Miles Davis, that's a little bit of it, but basically John Coltrane, all this stuff. In the West Coast, you got the introduction with Stan Getz doing this. South America.
Dave Brubeck's really big, so
Yeah.
I'm guessing that in the state they went more jazz for a while. And
Maybe they did. Yeah, Chet Baker, all these guys started to fill in the holes. That's where I was thinking. And suddenly, and plus, hey, I mentioned it. You can't undervalue the Kennedy assassination in terms of people just wanting to feel good.
oh yeah,
And the Beatles come along. How could you resist them? They're 2.5-minute songs, and they're all cute as little bugs with this bowl cut hair. They all dress in Pierre Cardin suits. They look great. Why not?
When they took that Pan Am flight to New York in 1964, they had what, 9,000 teenage girls at the airport in New York, the international airport, on the roof, waiting for these
Terrifying.
guys. And it was in the cold. And they considered themselves the lucky ones. Because I guess obviously at the time there was a little bit of a restriction of how many people you could have for safety and whatnot. And as soon as these guys got off the plane, it didn't take long to get mauled by.
Well, the joke that they thought somebody really famous was on the plane. That's why the people showed up. They didn't know it was, look out the window.
It was
Like
them.
Judy Garland. Who do we have on the plane? They couldn't believe it was us. So this is a perfect storm. You can't plan this stuff. So that's the British invasion, and I've always been fascinated by it. I have a lot of British invasion CDs and LPs because there's, Manfred Mann and Doo-Wah Diddy, like these great pop songs, because they filled a vacuum. That's what people wanted.
I could probably go through my vinyl collection right now, and I could tell you 50% of the albums I have are British, 25 Canadian, and 25 American.
That's a
guaranteed.
good mix.
Okay, I have some U2, which they're Irish, and you have In
Close,
Excess, a bit of Australian. But you're right, Ian, 100%.
And they got really good. Clapton got really good at the blues, and he said he always felt self-conscious playing around black blues musicians because that was the real source. He's pretty good, right? So, and Jeff Beck, all these guys, they're all blues guys at the beginning. And so it was just given back, and thank God it reignited rock in the United States. But because of the Vietnam War, the more poppy guys, like Dave Clarke 5, as I said, and Herman's Hermits, you can't keep going. You've got to get topical, right? Eric Burden managed to drop the Animals and he started the group called War. He had a few hits. And he went to the Monterey Pop Festival too. So, and then you had Woodstock, of course, in '69, was super political. So it's a really interesting era. And folks, if you're interested in classic rock, take a look it up, and maybe pick up a CD or an LP of the British Invasion. It's going to sound poppy, but it's also going to be really interesting too. Like bands like early versions of ELO, right? Called the original version of ELO was called The Move, with Bev Bevan, who became the drummer in ELO. But it's so 60s, this band, all right? And 10 years after, who appeared at Woodstock, great British band. I'd like to change the world. I'd love to change the world.
Such a good song.
It was an amazing song. Really a kind of an adult song, too. But again, a British band. And so Alvin Lee, with an amazing guitar player, but British, not American. And they invented the blues. So, in a nutshell, that's it, man.
How about some cocktail music?
Oh, good.
Welcome to Clarke Comments. Shut up and buckle up as the good doctor kicks out the jams and offers a selection of questionable, disturbed opinions that are somehow related to popular music.
I think for Clarke's comments today, I'm going to save you time, folks. And it's actually quite appropriate for what we've been speaking about Elvis too. And I'm going to save you time and money because I saw a new biopic called Elvis, directed by Baz Luhrmann.
Oh yes, here we go.
And I survived after a long hospital stay to tell you about it. In fact, I think this is the first film review we've ever had on this podcast. May it not be the last. Okay, first, let's get the facts. Elvis is a 2022 biographical musical drama directed by Baz Luhrmann, who co-wrote the screenplay. The film follows the life of Presley, told from the perspective of his manager, Colonel Tom Parker. That was probably a bad idea. Okay, it stars Austin Butler in the title role with Tom Hanks as Parker, co-starring Olivia DeJonge, Helen Thompson, Richard Roxburgh, and a bunch of other people you've never heard of. Now, I've met people who think the film is okay, tolerable. These people are fools and should be jailed. It's horrible in a way that only comes when horribleness is curated by very talented people. Baz Luhrmann is from Australia. He's Australian, and from now on, no Australian should ever be allowed to make a movie about American rock artists. He just doesn't get it. It would be like Quentin Tarantino making a film about the adventures of an ethically bankrupt koala bear. The mind reels. It doesn't work. No matter how much glitz and glitter Baz sprinkles on his confession, it can't hide the fact that he just doesn't understand or care to explore what made Elvis Presley really Elvis Presley. Everything is so simplified. It's a close cousin to Oliver Stone's film about The Doors, where Jim Morrison comes across as a drug-addled chimp. It's horrible. So you got sweeping, swooning overhead cameras, exploding fireworks, but they can't cover for a lack of narrative coherence. I've read Peter Goralnik's 2-volume biography of Elvis Presley more than once. So should you, I think, because it's the best rock bio ever written, and God help me, I've read more than a few. No sane person can read those bios, there's a double volume, and watch this movie and think, wow, Baz really nailed it. It's the essence to Elvis. How's that? Now, add to the confusion, Tom Hanks is dreadful as Colonel Tom Parker. He drifts in and out of a Dutch accent while wearing a disturbing fat suit, as they call it. It all adds up to toe-curling discomfort. Everybody knows if you don't keep Hanks in a short choke collar, he will really chew the scenery. Oh, hello, Forrest Gump. Austin Butler does a wonderful portrayal of Elvis if Elvis was a moody male model alive in 2022. There's no authenticity in this role. It's as if Luhrmann is not interested in rock music, but he is interested in the spectacle. Spectacle. This odd, bedazzled approach to the portrayal of musical performance might work well in a film such as Moulin Rouge, but when you're talking about the American South and the Depression and race relations and gospel music and rockabilly in Memphis, a weird insincerity begins to develop. Is he being ironic? Look, the best rock and roll biographies are made by people who really love, really above all else, I'd say, the brilliant sloppiness of rock and roll. It is not a disciplined genre of music. It's three chords and screaming. Simplicity is the appeal of Louie Louie. Listen, Baz Luhrmann is a wonderful director, but his selection of Elvis Presley as a subject is misguided and ultimately silly. Save your time and money and go see his wonderful Moulin Rouge from 2001. It's in that kind of atmosphere, that kind of carnival ambience, where his talents can truly be appreciated. Think Fellini light. So, folks, I'm always looking out for your pocketbook and your precious time. This is Ian Clarke from Clarke Comments.
Nice.
Well, I guess I'm not going to go see the Elvis movie.
It was on Disney Channel, but there you go.
All right.
Welcome to Kennedy's Corner. Following the advice of a behavioral psychologist, Ferris Kennedy has created a forum to express his nightmares, his terror, and his love of rock music. Dr. Clarke and medicated Wheeler help with his therapy by answering questions, or just acting like they're interested.
What do you got?
Well, here we go. Kennedy's Corner. This is a
Okay.
different one, guys. I really went out of the box for this one, and this is how I want to explain it to you when we get into it. So the question is, who comes to mind when this band name is mentioned?
Oh, that's neat. I like that.
So I'm going to say the band, and I have the answer that I think you're going to say, and then I have what I think of when I hear of this band.
Okay.
All right. So Ian, when you think of when you hear the Rolling Stones, what's the first name that comes to mind?
For me, it's Keith Richards.
Okay. I had you down as Charlie Watts, and I said myself Keith Richards is who I think of the band. So
It just hits me.
it hits you. Okay. The Beatles, Ian. Who do you have?
Oh, wow. When Paul McCartney, he's still alive.
Son of a gun. I had Lennon that you would
I know,
say,
I
and
know,
I
I
put
know.
McCartney as my guy.
Well, that's just what I think.
All right. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
I think of Stephen Stills.
Yes, I hit you right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was for me, he was it.
That's right. So I got you down as Stephen Stills, and for myself, I always think of Neil Young, just because my generation, I kind of know him a little bit
Well, I
better.
guess you know him a lot better than I do.
When you think of AC/DC, what's the first name that comes to mind?
Oh, Angus, I
Yeah.
guess.
So you and I are both.
Yeah, he looks like.
He is.
Yeah, he's iconic.
All right. When you hear of Led Zeppelin, who comes to mind?
Jimmy Page.
Okay, I had you down as Plant.
Yeah.
And I put myself as Page.
I'm more of a guitar guy.
Yeah, okay. The Who.
I think when I just think of the Who, I think of Roger Daltrey.
Okay. I think that you were going to say Keith Moon, and I put Roger Daltrey. The Eagles, Ian. Who do you think of?
Oh, I think of Ian. My memory here is I think of the drummer. Please help me out. What's his name?
Don Henley.
I think of Don Henley.
Okay, son of a gun. I had you down as Fry, and I think of Henley.
I think of Henley because he's his voice is so good, right?
And he's also a perfectionist.
Yeah, I guess he is.
Aerosmith.
Steve Tyler.
That's
maybe.
right. So I had you down as Steve Tyler, and I think of Joe Perry.
Oh.
Supertramp.
Okay. I think of Davies.
Yes, I had you down as
I know,
Davies,
I know.
and I go with Hodgson. We
I know.
argued about this
Yeah.
because you like Crime of the Century, I like Breakfast in America.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm more Roger Hodgson. When you think of the band, who do you think of?
Well, I think of Robbie Robertson because
Okay,
of the
good. I
songwriting.
had you pegged down as Robertson, and I think of Levon
I
Helm,
know, I know.
hence because I'm practicing drums. The Guess Who?
I think of their drum. No, I think of Burton Cummings.
Yeah, all right. You and I are both hand in hand. Cummings. All right. Whew. Not bad.
Not
eh?
bad. Not bad.
All right.
Interesting. It's a very interesting segment.
Wheeler,
Yes, sir.
we might agree on some, maybe. Let's see. Foo Fighters, who do you think of?
Grohl.
I think of Hawkins, and I had you down as Grohl. Okay. When you think of Red Hot Chili Peppers, who comes to mind?
Flea.
Yes, I put you down as Flea, and I think of Chad Smith.
Yeah, I know.
This one here, I think might have gone wrong, but we'll see. Black Sabbath.
Ozzy.
Yeah, I had you as Iommi. I thought you were going to say Iommi. I think of Ozzy.
Actually, a month ago, you would have been right.
A month ago? So I should have done this a month ago.
No, but it's because I've been listening to the new album and I've been returning back to the old Sabbath stuff.
All right. Cream, who do you think of?
Clapton.
I had you down as Baker.
I just can't.
No, you didn't. Did you? You're not going to say Ginger Baker.
You've made me allergic to Baker.
I put down Clapton just because he is the guy. Guns N' Roses.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good one.
I prefer Slash.
Okay, I had you down as Slash. I'm on the fence. I always think of either Slash or Duff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Duff
For
Slash.
Axl.
Well, I don't mind Axl, but just when I think of just Duff because he kept the peace with everybody. You know, he's just such a good. He's a good human being. Iron Maiden.
Ooh. Oh crap! I'm having a blank. What's his name? The guy who left and came back.
Dickinson. Okay,
Bruce.
so I had you on Dickinson. I think of Steve Harris because he started the band. Metallica.
Hetfield.
Yeah, I put you down as Hetfield, and I think of Lars.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat, actually.
This one here, I think I nailed it right. Pink Floyd.
Gilmore.
Yeah, I got you down as Gilmore. I think of Roger.
So do I, actually.
Because he's always bitter.
Well, he's the original member, too.
Maybe Genesis. I don't know if I did it right, but Genesis.
I mean, I think of Peter Gabriel, but I tend to listen more to the Phil Collins era.
Okay.
Okay, so I put you down that you would think of Collins. I think of Gabriel.
So do I.
Yeah.
I think Peter Gabriel.
When it comes to Van Halen.
Eddie.
Yeah, I go DLR. I had you down as Eddie, and I always think of David. I don't know.
Okay.
And the last one, which I think you and I are both going to have the same one, U2.
Bono.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would have probably said The Edge because you hate
Because
the...
he gave himself that nickname.
So this is what I came up with on
That's really good. That's
Interesting.
clever.
It's good. I kind of pegged you guys almost, and here's the proof in the pudding, right?
I'd say you had a good 70%.
It's a good run you had. Yeah, it's tough to do because, wouldn't it be Mick Jagger? Well, no, I just think of Keith Richards.
I always thought of Watts for you because you always spoke highly about Watts.
Yeah.
And you like Charlie, and you always said he's the one that's the backbone.
But you didn't ask us who was the most important. You said who do we think of first.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean necessarily the same thing.
It's true. The guy that comes to mind would be Keith Richards. He just looks like the ultimate, elegantly wasted rock star. So he just comes to mind. I don't know. If you said the Beach Boys, I would have said Brian Wilson. And I wouldn't have said anybody else.
What's his cousin's name? Mike Love?
Mike Love.
No one thinks about Mike?
No love.
Little
Mike.
love from Mike.
I think of John Stamos now because he's been drumming with them for... He's been...
I don't get that.
He went.
I know, but he wears this little pink outfit sometimes. I don't get that.
You know what it
situation.
is? I think they just needed someone good looking.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what it is.
And younger,
He's a good looking guy.
Good looking guy.
He hasn't really aged.
No, it's gotta be miraculous.
And
That's scary, actually.
because
Is
you said it yourself, sex appeal is huge.
If you don't have that in a rock band, you're gonna have to ugly up in a way that, like a Neil Young thing, like,
Or the Ramones.
Yeah, or the Ramones were ugly. I'm being harsh here, folks. I know, but hey, it's appearance, and you can use it, to portray honesty. And Neil Young is the god in that. If I dress like a hobo, therefore I'm being honest, and I'm not. This is why you never saw David Bowie and Neil Young on the same stage. One guy loved glitz and
Although, didn't we see at one point Iggy Pop with David Bowie?
Oh,
or they were roommates, but I'm not sure if they were ever on the stage
They
together.
were actually on. He played keyboards once, and Iggy.
Okay.
Iggy Pop's not good looking at all.
I wouldn't
No,
say he's a handsome man, no. But
He looks like a stooge.
but he was not glammy, but there was something punky. Punk got with the New York Dolls, for instance. Punk got close to glam.
True.
A few times. It was a weird crossover. Earlier, there's some great recordings of Blondie, I think at CBGB's or something. They sound pretty punky to me, and then they crossed over to New. So there's all these crossovers.
Well, all those bands had those certain looks, right? Like you had, Motley Crue had Vince Neil that was like the good-looking one. Davey Lee Roth at the time was the good-looking one.
Oh, the Beatles had Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney was Pete Best.
I know, and I think that's what got Pete.
Because he looked like James Dean, kind of.
He looked at James Dean, and I think that got him booted out. Whatever.
Like Bon
The one who died
Jovi,
in
self-explanatory.
Germany, What's his name again?
His name was Stuart Sutcliffe.
He
He looked a lot like James Dean. Yeah.
Bon Jovi is self-explanatory. It's him.
Yeah.
Mind you, Richie Sambora,
In his own way, sure.
And those two were always competing for the ladies.
Hey, listen, Sid Barrett was the cute one in Pink Floyd, or he used to be known as the Pink Floyd. And
I thought it was David Gilmour, actually.
no, he joined later. He joined kind of to replace Sid. They knew each other, but when Sid what year was that? By 67, I guess he was gone.
So who was the handsome Ned in The Who?
Well, I know it's a stretch, but Heathman was cute as a bug with those big, blood brown eyes. But it was really Roger. They played up as sexy.
And the Ramones was the really...
They uglied up. They went out of their way to be ugly, and it worked because it conveyed this honest street honesty.
And the Zombies, who was the cute as a bug there?
No, probably Colin. He was the lead singer, and I guess he was. I didn't think of him that way.
No, we don't. But
but often a band. You're right. So Elvis Presley, as they say, looked like rock and roll should look, and Bill Haley looked like he fell off the back of a pumpkin.
The guy does your taxes. Yeah,
yeah, does your taxes. But Elvis, you look you look like you could sing Blue Suede Shoes. So that's a big difference. Gene Vincent looked like that. Eddie Cochran looked like that.
Eddie Cochran was a good-looking guy. Yes, he was. Yeah.
And so it could have been a model. Like you have to look like Frank Sinatra was a handsome man. You have to look like what you're portraying, or you become a character actor. And the Ramones were character actors. And this, I think, is easy as that.
Well, and sometimes the voice helps you out because let's just be honest, Freddie Mercury, not a good-looking guy.
He had style, though.
He had style. He knew how to dress, and but you're right.
Roger Taylor was
He was the cute one.
He was the one that it wasn't Brian May with that hair of his.
With that Renaissance hair thing he's got going.
And who was the Led Zeppelin one?
Oh, Robert Plant was really the one they pushed to the forefront with his bare chest and stuff.
And the hair.
His beautiful golden hair. And yeah, every band has that. Now, that said, if there's a woman in your band, like Debbie Harry or Grace Slick, whatever, forget it. They become the focal point if they're singers. Not like Tina Weymouth and Talking Heads. She's a bass player, I think. But if they're a singer, it's over. You think about Blondie, it's Debbie Harry. Well, that's not the way the band was put together.
Chrissie Hynde, the Pretenders.
Yeah, really, Chrissie Hynde, the Pretenders. They become the focal point. You are toast.
Adonises in music are Jim Morrison and Michael Hutchence.
Yeah, really.
And they look alike.
Yeah, well, they used to say that Michael patted himself out of the gym with the black leather pants and his beautiful curled locks and stuff. Yeah, Jim Morrison looked like the music he sang about. He always looked kind of spooky, too.
He was an Adonis freaking guy.
Yeah, he was a handsome young man. And the fact the Doors used that to promote themselves. When they got turned down for spots, they would say, by the way, have you seen our singer? They, oh, okay.
So I guess the band had Robbie Robertson.
They didn't play that up that much back then, but Robbie looked pretty square.
And the Guess Who, I can't believe you told me it was Cummings, but
whatever. Vern Cummings was a Babe Magnet back then. But in 1966, 67, yeah, it wasn't Randy Bachman. he looked like a bouncer. He's not going to do anything for you.
Who was the Italian guy that replaced Bachman?
Dominic Triano, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it wasn't Dominic either. But usually a rock band, look, a lot of rock is about just sex appeal. It just is. And if you don't have that, you're going to have to get around like an Elvis Costello thing, or you're going to have to be, we used to call it geek chic. You're going to have to be so geeky or whatever to kind of circumvent that problem, that there's no sex appeal in this band. Okay, well then we'll go full geek. Talking Heads did that. We'll go full geek, and that way people say, okay, well they're trying to do this. This is different.
Well, I find the lead singer is always the one that they have to make like handsome. They always have to try to find, the lead singer. Like, no offense, Steve Tyler is hideous.
I know.
And women think he's gorgeous.
I know. He's disturbing.
And he's half Italian. And I thought maybe
that's
half
true.
would help him.
It's the good half.
Yeah. I figured, hey, he's half Paisan. No. Same with Joe Perry. Joe Perry's half Italian.
I know.
And half Portuguese, it's interesting.
Is it?
Yeah, he's half and half. Half and half.
A double.
Double.
Well, that's it. That's the
but
thing.
you're right. And that's rock and roll. Now, look at the crooners. Usually they're kind of good-looking guys. They're singing about, do you love me?
Well, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra.
Al Martino, Vic Damone. All these guys are handsome men. You have to be Tony Bennett.
Tom Jones. Women love Tom.
They sure did.
My mom loved Tom Jones. My grandmother still thought till the day she died, she thought he was still hot.
It's incredible. But
It's not unusual
to be loved by
anyone.
But that's right. You need that appeal in a singer, or else you become a character actor. And often character actors are guys in movies who obviously were not the Brad Pitt guys.
Angela Lansbury is a good.
Yeah, you're right.
She
wasn't.
just passed away, poor thing.
Yes, she did. But yeah, she was always kind of second level, second tier. You wouldn't go to the movie because she's in it. You'd go to the movie because Gene Tierney's in it. So that's it with rock and roll. If you don't have the sex appeal, you better do something very clever.
Attitude. You have to have attitude. If you don't have the sex appeal, you gotta have attitude. Attitude will save you.
Maybe.
Speaking of attitude,
Yes.
vinyl review time is
No,
about attitude.
Oh, hello.
The music at night, it sounds bright on Wheeler's turntable. He shines a light, he keeps his vinyl in sight, and gives you his magnificent review. Now here's a clue we have for you. It's time for Wheeler's Vinyl Review.
So I took a really bizarre album. It's a Lou Reed album called Take No Prisoners, which has been reissued not too long ago. On which, on a mark of 10, I'd say the music is about a 7.5 to 8.
Okay.
And the sound, surprisingly enough, I'm going to give it a 10 on 10.
Whoa.
But in the context that it's a live album. So,
I didn't know the whole thing's live, eh?
the Take No Prisoners, yeah.
You lost me.
Yeah, you don't like live albums.
I can't stand them.
So this one was this one came out of a 5-night residency at a club in New York that had about 400 seats called The Bottom Line.
Oh, sure.
And the sound is pretty amazing. It's one of those albums you actually should listen to with headphones on,
Yeah,
because
really.
it was binaural, one of the first
wow.
binaural albums.
Do you know the year?
The original year I've lost.
Okay.
I think it's the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay, I mean, that would make sense.
And it actually was used for a while as a hi-fi show
One of those,
horse.
Yeah.
And so this album is really interesting in the sense that it has a lot of the catalog highlights of Lou Reed. He's post-Velvet Underground at this point, but he's not too off the deep end kind of.
Yeah, that's what you mean.
And this record is probably Lou Reed at his most abrasive, uncompromising, and unforgiving.
He was a bitter guy at certain points in
Oh
his
yeah.
life. Oh
Well,
yeah.
At this point, amongst others. So you'll have on certain copies. I'm not sure if it's every copy, but there are certain copies I've seen on the internet. There's a sticker on there that says this record is offensive.
Oh, really? That bad?
It's that bad. So you have straightforward renditions of things like "Sweet Jane," "Walk on the Wild Side," and "I'm Waiting for the Man."
Yeah.
That being said, this is one of the longest recordings of "Walk on the Wild Side" because he talks on it, and there's the same thing with "Sweet Jane." It's a 10-minute.
10 minutes.
You also have things like "Satellite of Love," "Pale Blue Eyes."
Oh, these are the greatest hits.
Yeah, kind of.
Really.
For example, on the "Walk on the Wild Side," he goes off on a tangent. He says, "I really miss Candy, and I didn't even know her that well. I'm such a scam artist." He goes apparently also he goes on rants. He talks about a music critic called Robert Christgau.
Oh yeah, Rolling Stone guy.
He says he's a toe something.
Oh, so he was like a public breakdown.
Oh yeah. So this is an interesting album just because it's a historical. But he sounds really great on it. That being said, he is at his most immature on there as well.
I know he was a difficult animal, Lou Reed. You didn't want to get him in a bad state. I've seen him in interviews and he's dreadful. And the next day he seems to be nice. Like he's just so moody.
Is he still around, or is he?
No, he's dead.
He did, yeah.
So this is a hi-fi remaster done by an engineer called Vlado Meller. Before he passed, Reed added some input on it as well.
Oh.
And they've kept the binaural atmosphere from the original, but they've toned it down somewhat.
By no, you mean like a stereo split? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a stereo split made so that if you put it on your head, you feel like you're right in the middle.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like
I
in the
know what you
60s where it went
I
from
know.
left to right.
They did it too much in the 60s.
So you should be able to find a clean copy of this for around $30. Or even less, which is the great thing about this reissue, because it was almost impossible to find in a good state and a
it's
good
definitely not
price.
his most popular album, like by far.
So this is not the end-all be-all Lou Reed, but if you want a really good sounding record to test your equipment, it sounds really good. And if you want to hear an artist just going out of his mind on tape,
Yeah, plus the songs, Satellite, you and Sweet Jane, these are greatest hits. Pale
Exactly.
Blue Eyes. So it's not like he's, heavy metal machine or something where he's lost his mind. But the other great Lou Reed album that I like is, I think it's called Rock and Roll Animal. So he did some good stuff, but again, a difficult character. But Dylan's a difficult character. I've never seen a totally peaceful interview with Bob Dylan. He's always doing something to upset somebody. So these guys exist. No, that was an interesting review. 10 out of 10. That's rare for you.
yeah.
Yeah, you're actually pretty strict. You remind me of my buddy Louie whenever he vinyl grades. He's the strictest vinyl grader in the world. He uses halogen light. He puts it on, and it's as if like he closes down the lights, puts this whole black light around
my
it. There.
God.
It's he's got like CSI investigation skills. And whenever I bought an album off him, I'm like, so when you say it's VG, it's basically VG plus. He goes on all the 99.9% Discog sellers. He says yes. So actually, his VGs, even though he rates them,
Are probably near mint.
that's not bad actually. Here, perfect example.
He's reaching over for an album here, folks. Is this like Led Zeppelin Presence?
In French, présence.
Which makes a big difference.
So here you go.
Not their strongest album, by the
Not
way.
their strongest album, but I want to complete my collection. Yeah, okay, it's VG.
Oh, it's
No, it's
actually
excellent.
better than VG.
Yeah.
It's
But like I
really
said,
good. Yeah.
Louis
VG
tough.
plus plus plus. I'd say.
He's tough.
We're looking at the albums, folks, here, and it is
He's tough
immaculate.
because you figured might as well do it vinyl review. What the hell, I just might as well pull out a vinyl and here we go.
Sure, better than pulling out something else. Anyway,
On that incredibly classy note,
yeah.
Keep it classy, San Diego.
You stay classy, Vanier. We'll bid you adieu until next time.
from
This is-
WPIG.
I am signing off. Bonsoir.
and have a good evening, from Dr. Clarke.
And a good night from Stephen Wheeler.
And Kennedy says bye-bye.
Bye-bye.